Have you ever been hurt by someone who once helped you? They showed up when you were down, offered a hand, pulled you up. But then, that hand didn't let go. It held you, gently, softly, yet unrelenting. And you started feeling suffocated, like you're bound by an invisible debt, wrapped up in the guise of kindness. You're stuck in the feeling of having to be grateful, to repay, even when you're exhausted, when you want to say no, or when you're wrong. You know that feeling, right? When you're no longer free to be sad, to refuse, to be yourself, just because they've been so good to you. And the worst part is, you can't blame them. Who dares to criticize kindness? Who dares to reject a warm smile? If you've ever felt suffocated by that kind of kindness, stay with me. This story isn't just about me, it's about you, about the invisible strings we need to learn to recognize and learn to untie. Kindness is always trustworthy. I once thought, anyone kind to me must surely be a good person. Those who always listened when I fell apart, always helped when I needed it, always understood me to an almost eerie degree. I believed they were the ones to keep in my life. I feared that losing them would make me ungrateful, someone who doesn't cherish what they've given me. I convinced myself, it's okay. Sometimes affection comes in strange forms. Sometimes kindness doesn't look perfect, but it's still kindness. I tried to justify it, tried to believe those caring gestures were unconditional, coming from the heart. But the more time passed, the clearer it became. That wasn't the case. Over time, I realized those acts of love came with conditions. The phrases, "I just want what's best for you," always carried a price, a repayment, a submission, an agreement I wasn't allowed to refuse. Each time I tried to say no, I was reminded of the times they'd been good to me, as if I owed them my very emotions. And the saddest irony is, I still tried to protect their image in front of others. I feared that if I spoke the truth, if I admitted that kindness had its thorns, no one would believe me. Or worse, they'd stop believing in kindness altogether. I was scared I'd shatter the faith that kindness is always trustworthy, but deep down, I knew not every kindness is truly kind. Some things are wrapped in a shell of love, but inside are strings of control, tightening day by day. Kindness or an invisible debt? I owe them a grateful version of myself. I started smiling more, but only when they were around. I said, "It's okay," with a forced grin, even though deep down, it was far from okay, with a lot of issues. I feared that if I complained, if I showed even a hint of weakness, I'd be seen as ungrateful. I feared that if I distanced myself, I'd be accused of forgetting their life-saving kindness. So I learned to act, playing the role of someone strong, grateful, and kind in return. Even though my heart was exhausted, silently crying for help. I smiled even though I didn't want to, as they shared stories of manipulating others without seeing anything wrong. I nodded, though my heart clenched when they said, "I did it only because I care about you." I tried to keep the peace, tried to play the part of a grateful person worthy of their concern. But each time I did, I felt myself shrinking, like I was paying for their kindness with my very self. I thought I was keeping the peace, maintaining the relationship, doing the right thing. But it turns out I was losing myself, losing my boundaries, the limits I once cherished. Each forced smile, each reluctant nod, was a moment I let them cross my line, letting them define who I should be, how I should feel. I didn't just owe them a thank you, I owed them an entire grateful version of myself, a version that was no longer me. I don't even recognize myself anymore. One time I stood in front of the mirror for a long while, not to fix my hair, not to check if my face was okay, but to try to remember who I was before all this started, before I learned to smile out of politeness, to say thank you, because I was taught to be proper. I looked into the mirror, but the person looking back wasn't the me from before anymore. I flipped through old photos, pictures where I smiled brightly, eyes sparkling, as if the whole world was mine. But now, I smile because I know I have to. I say thank you because I fear being seen as ungrateful. Each smile, each word of thanks, is a thin layer of paint covering the real me, a version I no longer recognize. There were nights when I typed out messages spanning pages, wanting to pour out everything weighing on my heart, but then I deleted them. I deleted them because I feared hurting them, feared they'd think me selfish, feared they'd turn away. But I wonder, have they ever feared hurting me? Have they ever considered that their kind words, their caring actions, are suffocating me? I started avoiding things, dodging calls, replying to messages late, going out without telling anyone. I withdrew like a tree overpruned, just wanting to be left alone, just wanting to stop performing. But deep inside, something kept smoldering, screaming, I'm not okay, and I'm so tired. I wanted to shout, but I could only stay silent because I feared that no one truly wanted to hear. Kindness isn't a binding contract. One time I sat alone and asked myself, if they'd never helped me, if they'd never reached out when I was down, would I still keep in touch with them? And my heart went silent. Not because I'm ungrateful, not because I don't value it, but because I realized their help always came with an invisible condition, a condition that I must obey, must agree, must endure it all, simply because they'd once been good to me. I came to a simple yet heartbreaking realization. Some people help you, not because they truly care, but because they know helping you is the fastest way to keep you tied to them forever. Each time they brought up what I've done for you, I felt like I was repaying an emotional debt that could never be cleared. I lived as if I owed them my whole life, owed them smiles, owed them agreement, owed them even my own feelings. But then I realized gratitude isn't a binding contract. Gratitude is a quiet thank you from the heart, needing no show, no trade-off with submission. I don't have to live forever in that debt to prove I'm kind. And they, if they truly cared for me, wouldn't use past good deeds to control my present, to force me into the version they want. True kindness doesn't chain you down. It doesn't demand you sacrifice yourself to pay a price. For the first time, I allowed myself to step out of that circle, not with anger, but with peace. I don't need to repay kindness by losing myself. I just need to say thank you sincerely and then walk away free. And I choose to stop at peace. I once lived like someone in debt, not of money, but of smiles, thank yous, moments where I forced myself to repay others' kindness. Every day I carried a heavy backpack of gratitude, a backpack no one forced on me, but one I felt I had to bear because they'd once helped me up when I fell. Once said, I just want what's best for you, when I was at my weakest. But then one day I grew too tired to keep going, and I stopped. Not to give up, but to let go. Since I dared to let go, things didn't instantly get easier, but I felt lighter, like I'd finally taken off a heavy backpack I'd long thought I had to carry. I didn't erase the memories of those who helped me, but I stopped letting them define my worth. I stopped letting their kindness become the chains that bound me. I learned to see more clearly the difference between genuine kindness and manipulation dressed as kindness. True kindness doesn't demand you pay with your freedom. It doesn't force you to bow, to agree, to smile when your heart's breaking. I no longer feel guilty setting boundaries, saying no to demands I once thought I had to meet. I stopped nodding along just to avoid losing a relationship built on a sense of debt. I realize that if a relationship only exists because I fear hurting them, it's not a relationship. It's a cage, even if painted gold or wrapped in sweet words. I chose to love myself again, not through defiance, not by shouting or blaming, but with gentleness yet firmness. I allowed myself to be sad, tired, weak, without apologizing to anyone. I learned to live kindly, not to repay anyone, not to prove I'm good, but because I want to live that way, because I want my heart to feel light, free, to be itself. I want to live by my own values, not those imposed on me by others. Now I stand in a place of peace, not because everything is perfect, not because I'm free of hurt or doubt, But because I know no one can take that peace away, no one can bind me just because they once reached out when I was weakest. I thank them, sincerely, for what they did. But I don't owe them my whole life. I choose to stop at this peaceful place where I can be myself, with all my broken pieces, my cracks, and the tiny glimmers of light slowly emerging within me. Where I live, not to repay a debt, but to love and cherish myself. No one is born to be a tool for someone else's kindness. You're not either. You're not an emotional debt, not someone who has to strain to prove you're worthy of love. If you've ever thought, maybe I'm just too sensitive, it might be that you've just grown too accustomed to enduring, too used to putting others' feelings before your own. You don't need to strain to be loved. You don't have to smile when your heart's breaking. Don't have to say thank you when you just want to say enough. Try choosing yourself even just once. Choose to listen to your heart, set boundaries, step away from the invisible strings binding you, even if they're wrapped in sweet, kind words. If you see yourself in this story, in those tiring days, in those moments of self-blame for not being grateful enough, leave a comment, even just a dot, a word, or a short sentence. So we know you're here too, trying, searching for a way to break free from those sugar-coated chains. So we know we're not alone. And if this story resonates with you, if you think it deserves to spread, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. Let's remind each other together. We're worthy not because of others' kindness, but because of who we are.